Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. As with any review, this may contain spoilers. Do you prefer ketchup or mustard? Make no mistake about it, this is part 2 from the previous installment, Dead Reckoning Part 1, and initially this was supposed to be called Dead Reckoning Part 2. Perhaps the biggest impact on why the name changed is how Part 1 performed at the box office. Long story short, the movie didn't do as well as the studio thought or hoped it would. I believe there was a Variety report that the film may have even lost money. That being said, The Final Reckoning reportedly has a production budget of $400 million, not including marketing, which means it needs to make a ton of money to break even, let alone make a profit. The opening weekend was a success at the box office, but if the film doesn't have legs, this might end up being another loss for the studio. We'll have to wait and see, but at the very least, it looks to be on pace for The Final Reckoning to outgross Dead Reckoning Part 1. As I mentioned, something had to change after Dead Reckoning Part 1. Since the story in Part 1 ended in a cliffhanger, or more so didn't have a proper conclusion, the filmmakers couldn't pivot the story as much, and so the easier thing to do was change the name of the movie. As slight as the name change is, not calling it Part 2 is more a perception for the audience. Taking away or not including Part 2 in the title signifies something new, even if the story is a continuation. Speaking of the story takes place 2 months after the events of Dead Reckoning Part 1. It follows Ethan Hunt, who is in possession of the key that will grant him access to a drive containing the source code of the artificial intelligence known as the Entity. The drive is located in a sunken Russian submarine. Ethan and his team search for the submarine, all the while Gabriel is ousted as the Entity's proxy, and the Entity takes control of the world's nuclear weapons. Obviously, there's more to the story, but I won't spoil it here. As I alluded to earlier, this movie is interesting in multiple ways. I'm not only referring to the story, but also its perception with the audience and box office. Why is The Final Reckoning doing so much better at the box office than Dead Reckoning Part 1? I wouldn't say that the story is better than Dead Reckoning Part 1, but the pacing felt a little stronger in The Final Reckoning. The pacing did, however, start to slow down towards the end. It became sluggish, especially during the airplane scenes. Those scenes could have used some aggressive editing in my opinion. It's one thing to build suspense, but instead of suspense, it felt like it lingered too much. Because the pacing was stronger, the story felt more immediate, and the threat of world annihilation was palpable. Perhaps the biggest reason I think the movie is doing better than Dead Reckoning Part 1 is because of a negative reason actually, clickbait. The marketing was on the edge of being clickbait. For those who don't know what clickbait means, it essentially means to sensationalize or mislead in order to attract views. In marketing The Final Reckoning, it was heavily implied that this would be the last Mission Impossible, or at the very least, Ethan Hunt's last Mission Impossible.
I need you to trust me. One last time.
If the general audience believed this could be the last Mission Impossible, this might give them more of an incentive to go to the theater and see this version of Mission Impossible for the last time. I'm not saying this is the definitive reason why The Final Reckoning is doing better at the box office, but I don't think this should be dismissed either. One complaint I have with the story concerns the antagonist. Something was missing with the villains, both with Gabriel and the Entity. Since we did get more of Gabriel in Dead Reckoning Part 1, I was hoping for something creative with the Entity. I wanted his presence to live up to its name. Become an undeniable force that feels like it's suffocating the world and Ethan Hunt's team. No matter where they go or what they do, the Entity is aware. The Entity was depicted as more of a prediction model, but that could be a tricky thing to pull off. How do you convincingly make the Entity powerful enough where it can predict and stay ahead of Ethan's moves, but also present a clever way for Ethan and his team to make moves that the Entity wouldn't expect? I don't think the filmmakers were as successful in that regard. I would have liked to have seen the Entity be more offensive. Gabriel was used as its proxy who took orders from the Entity, but that wasn't enough for me. The Entity fell short for me of being a memorable villain, which is a shame because the potential was there. Overall, the movie is good and it may be worth watching. If you stuck around this long, why not give the video a like, try it out, see if it works. Subscribe and check out my other videos. Leave a comment, let me know what you think of the film. See you in the next review.